Hello, baby. No more clapping. Welcome everybody to Style and Direction.
Welcome everybody.
Is that your Seinfeld impression?
It's Jerry Seinfeld. It's like your Larry David, except he's just screaming.
Well, my Larry David is basically me doing a Charlie Day impression, but saying things that Larry David would say.
I think if I just do more Jerry Seinfeld impression in this episode, I might get canceled because if I do it long enough, it just sounds like I'm doing a deaf guy voice.
Oh wow! I was gonna say my culture is not a costume because
it's double cancellation. So
you guys are both doing. It's not Jew face, but it's Jew voice.
It's digital.
Hey Spencer, you talk about canceling. I mean, what if it was? I was gonna say noise canceling because it's.
What if it was? I think my noise should be canceled.
There you go. My God, this is the worst episode.
In 2 years, my Instagram, there's gonna be a photo of me with duct tape over my mouth, and it's gonna say canceled, and it's because of this episode.
And your name tag's gonna say USA. Louis C.K. on it.
Yeah, I'm Looper Louis C.K. I'm young Louis C.K. and I've been sent to the future to kill myself.
That's what it's gonna be like. I mean,
yeah, that's what the liberals want.
Do you think that you look like a young Louis C.K.?
I think I look as much like a young Louis C.K. as Joseph Gordon-Levitt looks like a young Bruce Willis. I'm talking about this movie a lot today. I brought it up before, and it's just on my mind now.
I was going to say, were you listening to our episode with John where we talk about that exact thing?
Wait, did we talk about Looper in the last episode too?
Yes!
Oh my God, I just got looped.
Cinematic. I mean, technically.
This is crazy. Okay.
Well, hey guys, welcome to Style and Direction, a menswear podcast without the stuffiness. I am Ethan M. Wong.
I'm Spencer DSO.
And we've got a special guest with us in the virtual podcasting studio. Technically, he's in his own pod. I mean, we're
in a podcasting studio in the metaverse.
That's right. Shout out Zuck for this one.
Sponsored this episode.
But welcome back to the studio, young Chomsky.
Thank you. This is a non-fungible episode, actually. So
that's right. It's the first NFT episode.
If you're out there trying to funge this, we'll find you. I'll come to your house.
Do not right-click our episode, please.
Please don't.
It's the only thing that can kill us.
Actually, we're gonna start taking bets of this episode, so you guys can start bidding for whatever you want to own for this.
Or maybe we could just do like sports betting type stuff, where it's like,
over under.
Yeah, who's gonna win the coin toss that we always do in the episodes?
Oh yeah, coin toss. How much we're gonna score by if it's a multiple of 10.
Yeah.
Wow, lots of Jewish movies lately, huh? I mean, I guess that's not,
okay.
I guess
that's
we're talking
about a TV show, not a movie.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably second of all, but
I mean, it's Seinfeld the movie. Was that ever going to be a thing, like Arrested Development?
No,
Did they ever say
Seinfeld? There was ever going to be a Seinfeld the movie.
Should there be?
No, I don't think so.
You'd watch it?
Seinfeld the movie, The Ride.
Okay, maybe at the end of the episode we can all pitch our Seinfeld the movie / Seinfeld the movie The Ride, or the novelization or video game, whatever property we want in the Seinfeld expanded universe, which NBC Universal, balls in your court.
There you go. Spoiler alert, I would just make it the Simpsons ride, which was previously the Back to the Future ride.
That's right.
Damn.
And then make that, which is basically
out of the
Star Wars.
game.
Yeah, that's it.
I didn't know that changed. I think I want to play the Seinfeld MMO. And
oh my God.
Your class can be like comedian, Jewish comedian.
So would you be
black
playing? Would you be playing as like the main the sign crew, or would you be like they would be giving you missions?
Yes, that's what I think. They'd be giving you. I think that this is all. I'm improvising this like a comedian.
Yes,
I think that you play a comedian coming up in New York in the '90s, and you interact with the Seinfeld crew, and you level up by you grind at the clubs. This could be a hell of a good game.
That would be pretty good.
Someone tell Tracy Jordan. and then he could make this video
I really want to see
game.
like the pixel art like stand up things, like where you just have like little like Animal Crossing noises and a bunch of text on the bottom, where Jerry's like, I can't miss my flight.
I don't think he says that.
I just watched an episode where he talks about missing a flight, but that's all I
Oh.
can remember from the stand up bit.
Yeah.
Well, so for those of you who can't tell what this
Oh
podcast
God, we
episode is
haven't
going to be
introduced
about,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
this episode's all about Seinfeld, or technically it's about Jawnfeld, the
Yeah.
the Instagram account curated by young Chomsky and his
Hell yeah.
team. I still love like
Team?
didn't you say like like Merry
Whenever it's
Christmas
a
or something from
yeah,
the
whenever it's
team?
a holiday, I post like Happy Thanksgiving from all of us at Jawnfeld. Multiple people DM me and be like, "What do you mean?" Like Happy
How do I
Thanksgiving
get in? Can I
from the
intern at
Jawnfeld team.
Jawnfeld?
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
taking any applications. Actually, it would be sick. I could write one of those articles about like how to make money from your side hustle. I mean, I don't make money from this, but if I just delegated everything or like
There you
automated it
go.
somehow, I did it. I made it like an AI.
You could become the next like fuck Jerry with like an empire
Yes.
of like of sitcom style.
Would it
recap
just be
Instagram
fuck Jerry
pages.
Seinfeld? Like would that
Oh,
just be the
there you go.
title?
And I mean, everyone does want to do that, so it's perfect.
Yeah, I should reach
I-
out.
Apparently
Yeah.
everyone on that show. Okay, so one thing about Seinfeld I thought was interesting is like this guy who, okay, no offense to Jerry Seinfeld, or maybe offense to him, but like he's a very like mid dude, you know what I'm saying? And like there's so many hot girls that he dates on that show, and I feel like it's such a 90s thing because like I remember like I watch Frasier all the time, and I'm like, I mean, and okay, like Frasier's rich, he's tall, he's got a great voice, but I'm like, damn, all these like women guest stars throwing themselves at Frasier,
Well,
and I guess Jerry Seinfeld.
how successful is Jerry Seinfeld supposed to be in the show? Because is he Jerry Seinfeld? Well, I guess he's not Jerry Seinfeld with the TV show level fame because there's an entire season
Yeah.
about him trying to get a TV show.
I think it's
But-
kind of ambiguous, but it's sort of like he does trade on the success a little bit because like sometimes characters in the show will be like I saw you on Tonight Show or something to
Mhm.
him, but
Okay.
I think that is absolutely like it was a sitcom trope. I think going way back of the kind of schlubby dude with like way hotter women. I think back to like mid 20th century, but.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For sure, it was having a big moment. I don't know, When Harry Met Sally, Seinfeld, Married with Children kind of like played on it in a different way.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I think that's kind of fallen out of favor. Now that everybody's woke all the time, you can't just be a regular sitcom dad with super hot.
You have to
wife.
justify your hot partners by being hot yourself. I mean,
Yeah, or like rich, I guess that's still a thing.
But I mean, hey, we're gonna get into the clothes, but maybe if clothes maketh man, then is George Costanza the sexiest bitch who's ever lived?
I think at a certain point, clothes can't save you. So that's I think
Sorry,
what's
Jason
happening.
Alexander.
Yeah, no offense. But
Much
wait,
offense
so
to Jason
have you
Alexander.
guys like young Chops? Did you grow up watching Seinfeld? Like, what's your connection to the show here?
Yeah, so I mean, Spencer and I were chatting about this for just a minute a little earlier, but I had seen it. I'm old enough that Seinfeld aired on TV when I was a kid, and I did. It's funny, like I'd seen it, right? Like I was in
Okay.
elementary school, and I would be watching my like I got a TV in my bedroom when I was a little bit older, but yeah, I would see it like airing or in syndication. And it's funny because watching it now, but I never actually watched it like in the years it was on DVD or whatever. I never deliberately watched it. So I'm watching it for real for the first time. And it's funny because I'm having these moments of just these memories popping out. Like there's an
Yeah.
early episode of things that I saw, like it's so distinct, the feeling of deja vu or recollection, right?
Mhm.
I remember that there's an early episode where George is on the phone they've cured baldness in China, and he's
Yeah.
getting the
Yeah.
Chinese delivery guy to translate while he's talking to the company, and he says, ask them if there are any side effects. And the guy says impotence, and it's a big laugh line. And I remember seeing that as a young lad, and my dad was in the room, and I'm like, what does that mean, impotence? And I asked my dad, and I don't remember what he said to me, but I feel like it didn't. I guess most of the stuff like that, it's like sex stuff that like didn't make sense to me as a
Yeah,
kid.
what the hell is sex, man? I don't have no
Well,
idea.
there's an episode recent in season 6 where, or I think it was, yeah, season 6, where they're like talking about a menage a trois, and I'm like,
Oh
what? That
yeah.
sounds crazy. What does that mean? It was the same kind of thing. I remember seeing this, but I did not get it. But now,
Now you get
um,
everything.
I do. I know what those words mean, and I live in New York, and I'm
So,
like the
so you're
age.
always running into like fucking soup Nazis and shit. You're
Yeah,
like, this is so real.
yeah, and I'm always having menage a trois. Um, but you know, hadn't really thought about it before, but there's a point in season 2 where Jerry says, Elaine's like, "How old are you?" And Jerry says, "I'm 36." I'm like, "Oh fuck, I'm 36." Oh, that was before my birthday.
Hmm.
But I was just like, yeah, I don't know. It resonates with me a ton now, and the show is still totally. I think that the stand up bits don't stand up, so to speak, to the test of time.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
But everything else, almost everything else, the bulk of the rest of the show is still totally, I think, relevant and
Yeah.
funny, and doesn't really feel dated. Like the relationship stuff and the human foibles are still very fresh to
He's
me.
up. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Spencer, did you grow up watching this show?
kinda. I mean, so like, I don't have any infant memories of this show. It would have
We
been
get it.
running the
You're young.
last. Yeah, but and I think my dad probably had it on when he was watching me in the room, because I grew up watching this show from reruns, because it's like, I think it like
Syndication.
Seinfeld is always on TV. It's all, if you have cable, you can find a channel playing Seinfeld basically 24/7. And there were a lot of times when like my dad would just be in the living room watching Seinfeld, and I did that whenever I like needed just to find something on TV. I would flip until I found like Seinfeld or The Office or some other sitcom that's always playing, uh, and watch that. I'm a big fan. I haven't like binged through it on Netflix yet. I started to do that in preparation for this episode, and I'm in the like middle of season 2 now.
Right.
But I've seen a lot of this show. I'm a big fan of Seinfeld, and I'm also a big fan of Curb, the
Yeah.
the I guess spiritual successor to Seinfeld.
It was
Yeah.
funny too to see how many like I'd seen all of Curb as it was
Hmm.
released, and so many of the plots, or not that many, but several like plots and jokes are directly
Yeah,
kind of transposed,
well,
a little
because
musical metaphor
when
from
you
Seinfeld to Curb.
consider, yeah, when you consider that it's like George is just Larry David.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. They I can't, oh man, I wish I could remember exactly like what it was, but I went like back to back watching an episode of Seinfeld, and then like later that day I put on Curb, and it was what you're talking about, where it's like Larry was having the exact same conversation with someone that George had in like the Seinfeld episode.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the first season episodes of like Curb is the whole like pant boner thing with his
Oh,
like
that's
corduroy
right. That's the
pants, which I
pilot. Yeah.
feel, which
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's a very like, I mean, so for me, I never grew up watching Seinfeld. I don't know if my parents watched it. They might have. But my parents definitely, my mom was the one who watched more TV, and she watched like Friends. So like when I was a kid, that's what I watched. Not really a like style based show for me. And of course, like Scrubs, they're just wearing scrubs all the time.
They are
Um,
just wearing scrubs.
yeah. And then you've got like How I Met Your Mother, which again doesn't really have a lot of style in it till like later seasons. We get like Barney and then Ted wears like a sport coat. And so for me, I got HBO Max, I think, right before the pandemic, and I actually started watching Curb more before I even watched Seinfeld. And I thought Curb was really funny, and I mean, it was just hilarious to see the fucking stuff that he gets into,
That
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 he
Larry
sets
David.
himself up. Yeah, that Larry David. And then I think, yeah, I think once like the pandemic started to be in like full swing, I started to watch Seinfeld. But I watched it on Hulu because that's where it was at the time, and of course there are fucking ads, and I don't watch on my laptop, so I don't ad block it. And so it took me such a long time to get through a lot of the seasons. I think I made it to like season 5 or 6 before they yanked it, and then a couple months later, they put it on Netflix, where I finally finished the show. And I've got to say, like, I don't think it's that funny. Maybe it's because I've been like sitcomed out my whole life, and of course watching Curb and seeing like kind of the reoccurring ideas in a more modern setting, kind of ruined it for me. Of course, there's a TV trope of Seinfeld is unfunny, but the thing I did like that kept me coming back to it was seeing the variety of the outfits. I don't think I've seen a show where there's that much like variety in the style.
Wait, so you watched Seinfeld not because you thought it was funny, but just for the fits?
I mean, it's like one of those things where, if you know like the formula or like you kind of
Okay.
like, again, like you know how Larry David stuff happens and then you see it like bite him on the ass, right? Like at the end of the episode. That happens a lot in Seinfeld, right? With the, could be depending on the character that you're following that particular time. And so it's like, as you're paying it, like it's kind of like you're watching it for the tropes, which is
See,
not.
I'm a connoisseur, and I just watch it for the comedic performance of Jason Alexander as George Costanza, the
Well, I
finest
mean,
sitcom performance of all time.
I mean, it's
Sorry,
not.
Brett.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what kept me more engaged was seeing like again like George has like a different variation of trad in every outfit. Jerry will, I think in the first couple of seasons, Jerry wears like a mock neck a lot with jeans, and then he
Mhm.
starts wearing like OCBDs and then different jackets, and then of course you have like different stuff where they have to wear a suit or they're meeting with corporate people. You don't really see that in like How I Met Your Mother or Friends, for example. They're kind of just wearing like the same thing all the time. Especially not Frasier. Frasier's wearing a suit all the time, right? Like sometimes you see like his tennis outfit or whatever. But Seinfeld, I think, because of the show, because of it being a show about nothing, it's just about whatever is happening. You just see what regular quote New York people are wearing just out in their daily adventures. So like I thought it was cool, and it kind of fits in with the '90s nostalgia that we're currently having again, because that's the current mood of menswear, right?
It is the
Yeah.
menswear
Also,
mood.
there's a lot of episodes of Seinfeld. I've never seen Frasier. I guess Frasier has way more episodes than Seinfeld, but
Yeah, it has
um,
11 seasons.
yeah, there's Seinfeld.
Take that.
Long running show, 180 episodes. Um, but it is funny. But I do know that trope, and it's interesting. I thought more going into it that it was going to be like that. I feel like the joke is also. I watched Hamlet today, and it was just all a bunch of cliches. Um, but same idea, right? Like everything from Seinfeld has kind of filtered into the culture, and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
all jokes that we all know, even though we haven't seen the show. But I was surprised then at how funny I thought. It was to actually watch because there was so much that I didn't already know or didn't get or it's just the delivery is so good.
Yeah.
Y- Yeah, I do think. I mean, maybe it's just like a not main. Maybe the opposite of main character syndrome. I do think everyone else has funnier stuff than than Jerry would actually go
Because
through.
he's just
The
like the
straight
straight
man.
man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, like, Kramer's gonna get into wackier shit than Jerry.
yeah, yeah. But again, so yeah, I just it was an interesting experience. Maybe I gotta rewatch it again because like I would just watch it like randomly.
Hmm.
I didn't really like. I don't really pay attention to it as much as Frasier. I know we're gonna have a Frasier episode later this year. I feel like.
Mm.
Eventually, this is just gonna be like a Seinfeld recap podcast.
Yeah.
We're gonna transition. Maybe then we'll do Simpsons or something. Then
I think there's a lot of
use
money
another
in that.
Simpsons podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
good business.
well. Speaking of business, so like, how did you, Chomsky? How did you start the whole Jawnfeld account? Like, I
How did you
know.
start the Jawnfeld
Well,
business?
yeah,
Jawnfeld
you
Inc.
was it?
Well, yeah, I
Yeah, I
actually
just I'm not
inherited the
sure.
business from my grandfather. Um, no, yeah, I mean, there's not like much more of the story, but I'd never seen it. I think I had COVID. I mean, I did, but I think that's when I started it.
Yeah.
Because Seinfeld was on Netflix, and so I was just like, this there's a lot of episodes of this. This will keep me occupied while I have COVID.
Mhm.
So I started watching it, but uh, little tangential note here. I don't. I watched it on Netflix originally, but now I don't because Netflix shows it in 16 by
Yeah.
9, which
Hmm.
is not how it was originally aired, and it cuts off the top and bottom of the image. So the first, I don't know, so many episodes, I got it from Netflix, but I was having a hard time getting square images for Instagram, so I was making them like bordered, which added a little bit to the process. But then I got I found a source for it in the original aspect ratio.
There you
So
go.
that's what I've been using. So that's more conducive. But basically, I started watching it, and immediately in the first episode, I just kept pausing it to take screenshots of different fits. And then,
Inspo, yeah.
yeah, I was just like, damn. And again, that was one of those things that I already knew, that Seinfeld had cool fashion, and that there were a lot of different accounts about Seinfeld fashion and stuff. But then it just came
Mhm.
to me like, oh, I have access to all these episodes. This is would be a good structure for an account, to do one episode a day and one post for each episode, instead of, because I looked briefly, I didn't like research this exhaustively, but I was like, yeah, there's a lot of different Seinfeld fashion accounts, but none of them have that exact format. Not that it's
Mhm.
all that different, but I thought this would be a good way to do it, and it'd be a little project, a little side project for me, to keep
And the
me
team.
busy.
And the
Yeah,
team.
yeah. Well, that was shortly before I hired the rest of those unpaid interns. That was around three posts in. I was like,
I can't
I
do
need.
this anymore.
I mean, it legit takes time, and it's kind of annoying. But yeah, I got those
Did you
interns
feel
around.
like it was kind of like current that you were doing it? Since obviously the ALD menswear merger, like that's kind of like the past 2 years have been like at the forefront. I mean, it's
Yeah,
always been. I found this old article on Today, not Today, but from
yeah.
the publication of Today, where
That's confusing.
it's another normcore article from
Uh huh.
2014 about Seinfeld and everything like that. And so, but like that was never like the entire menswear conversation. Obviously, there's so many fractured parts of it, but it almost feels like you were tapped into the pulse a little bit, like it was
Yeah.
very poignant.
Well, I'm just kind of tapped into the pulse kind of guy. I mean, I definitely wasn't thinking it in terms of this is relevant due to the menswear merger and ALD, but like, sure, that's basically what I was feeling. I mean, I think Seinfeld, talking about the fashion of Seinfeld, it's been relevant all over again for like a long time, or many
Yeah.
times now, to the point where I was like, oh, this is kind of cliched as it is, but whatever. Yeah, but also it felt right. I was like, this, people will probably like this, and we'll
Yeah.
see, but who cares? So yeah, it definitely felt like the moment is still there for this, even though I don't think I'm certainly not breaking new ground other than with the format of it.
Yeah,
It's kind of in retrospect, it's kind of crazy. I mean, there are accounts that it's like every Tony Soprano outfit or whatever.
Hmm.
So it's kind of crazy in retrospect that no one else has like there have been so many articles being like, damn, can you guys believe that Seinfeld is stylish, but
well,
no one else has done this.
I will say I did look up some stuff, and there is like every George Costanza outfit Instagram. I think there's a one for
Yeah.
every Kramer outfit, and
Okay.
Yeah,
maybe one for Jerry or his sneakers.
I feel like there's a bunch of accounts like that either focus on like a main character,
Hmm.
or of course there's all these Seinfeld meme accounts that are just will never end, that are just like, oh, she had COVID, Jerry, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the innovation, in air quotes, right, about this is that it's structured around the episodes, and I include screenshots of all different characters.
Yeah.
Sometimes I
Yeah.
even really try to focus on not the main characters.
I'm
If there's a good background character in the episode, I
And it
always
is
try to include them.
crazy how many background characters just like bangers all around. Like the like I wrote mentioned him specifically. But there's an episode where the episode where George quits and then goes back to work because he regrets quitting. His boss is wearing this like three-piece like Prince of Wales suit with like a striped tab collar shirt and like a rep tie, and I'm like, holy shit, this is like so good. And he's a character with like 6 lines of dialogue.
Well, yeah, that's kind of been my thing lately. I I mean, Spencer, we've talked about this before too, with when we watch like period movies, where the issue is like the main characters, um, are not always dressed particularly well, or they're not super accurate for vintage. But the best people wearing vintage are often the extras, because
Hmm.
that's what like costuming warehouses will have a lot of. And so with regards to Seinfeld, I mean, yeah, it's cool to see, what Jerry's wearing. I mean, it doesn't each character has like their own theme, which we'll get into in a second. But I do like, yeah, the idea of looking at like the background characters, or like the reoccurring characters. Like there's that guy, I mean, what's his name? Who's the guy in Breaking Bad? Whatever his reoccurring
Oh,
character, the
the
dentist.
dentist,
Yeah, like
Yeah, that is
Bryan Cranston
Bryan
as.
Cranston's character.
trying
Like
to
he'll
remember the
wear like,
character's name and I can't.
really cool coats and everything. The guy who plays the lawyer in Silicon Valley, I think, like the kind of
Oh yeah,
Southern
Tim
guy, the guy who's
Watley.
Tim Watley.
Sorry.
Yeah, he has some really cool looks, and of course, yeah, uh, George's boss, Elaine's boss, even before Jay Peterman. Like, there's
Mhm.
just a lot of great attire that you see that, to me, when I was looking back, when I was writing the whole corporate essay about, corporate attire and yuppie attire and everything like that, it was, cool to see guys wearing suits, maybe trad adjacent, that feel a little bit more natural. Like, it doesn't feel super hashtag menswear, as opposed to like now where I'm watching like American Auto. Man, we're just talking about all sitcoms today, huh? Um,
I don't know what
where
that
like
is.
it's a good show. Same people who made Superstore, except it's way better than
I
Superstore.
don't know what
But
that is.
anyone on NBC, anyone wearing a suit now, to me, feels like they're just looking at like Instagram Explore pages.
Ugh.
And I like, there's two characters on American Auto. There's like the heir to like the I guess like the Ford empire, and he's always wearing like really wide lapels, crazy bold pattern, very hashtag menswear in the Instagram way. And then you have like the head engineer who's wearing like side tabs, maybe like a spread collar, more of a narrow tie, which feels hashtag menswear, but in a more tasteful way.
Hmm.
And it's like, but to me, I guess I'm like poised my mentor. I'm like, okay, I clearly see what they're doing here. They're trying to show the differences and everything, but it doesn't feel like regular guys, as opposed to Seinfeld, where like, I mean, I remember, I think one of your recent posts where there's like a picture of guys on the street wearing like fucking felt fedoras or Tyrolean hats with like a big overcoat, and it just feels normal because like that's what
Yeah.
in my head what it feels like in New York, right? Like these guys just on the street with a coat and headwear that is practical, that doesn't feel like they're trying too hard, or that it feels like too much of a costume.
Yeah, that's what
And
it's like in New
so,
York.
yeah,
Guys are always wearing big coats and hats.
Yeah, I
that's
know.
I think I made that
If you
joke before.
like in Williamsburg.
All the
Uh,
hipsters.
yeah, well, I'm
Um,
talking about the Hasids specifically, but
oh, there you go.
Oh, the biggest
Over.
hipsters.
yeah, but I'm allowed
Um,
to say that.
Yeah, you are allowed. You get the
I'm
pass,
getting
the J
canceled
pass.
again. But I think something that's also relevant and that I've noticed, again, I'm only like midway through season 2. So many episodes in Seinfeld revolve around like menswear or like
Yes,
clothing things.
Yeah,
100%.
Like the first episode and the last episode, George and Jerry have the conversation about the like where the shirt button is placed on a shirt. There's the episode where Jerry gets an expensive suede jacket and is super excited about it and just wears it around the house, which is definitely something I've done when I've
Mhm.
gotten something new.
I mean,
Um,
that's one of the things that also I wasn't prepared for. Like, I knew about the episode with the jacket, and Jerry has to wear it inside out because he doesn't want the suede to get ruined. And like, there's a few episodes like that, but even more, there's just so many examples of where the jokes or the plot somehow revolves around clothing, like
mhm.
buying clothing. Like, there's one where there's a suit and George wants it, and it's like going to be on sale this weekend, and so some other guy comes in who's his size, so he hides it in the store so the
yeah,
guy can't find it. Or like where Elaine buys these new shoes, and then this other character wants to know like where she got the shoes. There's just so much. Like, it was so funny to me. That's another thing that I totally wouldn't have appreciated at all when I watched this as a kid, or
right.
even, in my early adulthood. I wasn't really into fashion, but yeah, it also makes perfect sense, I guess, when you zoom out, because getting dressed is something that you do every day,
Yeah.
and that's the crux of the material, right? It's about the funny things about mundane life. That's the ore from which this show is mined. So it makes perfect sense that so much of it would be about clothes, but it's the kind of thing that I think I'm appreciating it so much more, given that I've think and spent time thinking about clothing way more than the average person, maybe, or certainly more than I used to when I was young. So was also something that helped me appreciate it, or has made me appreciate it more, that it's like constant, honestly, in the show, the little bits about fashion, like buying a new
Mhm.
jacket, or Morty Seinfeld being like, is this sport coat appropriate for this, and his wife's like,
Yeah.
no, it's too loud, or something like that. So yeah. And or the sorry, I'm just thinking of all the different the one where Kenny Bania like wants to give Jerry this Armani suit,
Oh
and
yeah.
it is and then it becomes this whole bit, but it's like the it's always the springboard for a joke. And they talk about like their sizes. He's like, yeah, this is size 40, but I'm a 42 now because I've been working out. And I was like, hell yeah. Anyway, it's really
So
really
you know
common.
what that feels like, right?
I do
Because
know what that feels
you're
like. But
yoked.
that's another episode. We'll do the
The
you
fitness.
can
When we get ripped, we'll do the getting
yeah,
ripped
just
episode.
the difficulty of having the goals of all your clothes fitting and also becoming massive.
Yeah. I
John actually
wonder.
said that too. He
I
wants
wonder
to talk about that.
between Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David, who the creative force who like
Mm.
thinks a lot about clothing is, because there are a lot of, now that I'm thinking about it, there are a lot of clothing centric episodes of Curb, but
Hmm.
it mostly involves like Larry borrowing shirts from his friends
Hmm.
or him giving
And
shirts to other
and then
people.
him ruining it for
There
some
are a lot.
reason.
There's just a lot of episodes of him wearing other people's shirts, and that's where it kind of ends, I
I
think.
mean, the finale of the Curve, the recent season, where he borrows someone else's shoes. Like that's
That's
Yeah.
right.
and
Well,
yeah.
and you also get the sense that Larry, I feel like, is precious about his clothes, which I
Uh
think
huh.
makes it funny. Like if he has a favorite hoodie, and like if he
Oh yeah,
can't,
or he doesn't like when his dentist like rolls up his sleeves on his sweater or something
yes,
like that.
yes,
Yeah.
he's very
He'll stretch it out.
particular. Or there's a bit on I think the most recent season of Curb where the guy has his sweater tucked into his pants, and it becomes a whole
Oh,
joke.
that's
I was like, "You
right.
tuck your
He
sweater,"
Yeah, sweater tuck.
which I
Yeah.
thought was
Yeah.
so funny because I think tucking knitwear is cool, but his pants were so low rise. It looked you could tell the actor if he lifted his arms like at
It
all
would
that
come
it was going to
out.
come untucked. It's like
Mhm.
Yeah.
he needs he needs to listen to Ethan's podcast and wear high rise trousers.
Everyone should do it. You heard that, everybody.
Yeah.
So when you're watching this, obviously you're going one episode at a time. How do you pick 10? Because I know
Mm.
you graciously gave us the archive that you currently have, at least the
Hmm.
time of recording. And at first, right, you had only 10, but then I started to see you would have more, and you would post more too, like the ones that didn't make it onto the main feed. So what was the selection process like for you?
Yeah, great question, Ethan. Well, let me tell you about my working process. It is difficult, and it's become because as I got more into it, it only became harder. But and my kind of metrics for deciding which ones to include have evolved over time. But there's a bunch of different questions I ask myself. I guess like sometimes it's just this is really cool. Like I would wear this.
Ooh, okay.
If it's a male character, sometimes it's women, right? So doesn't apply as much. But sometimes it's like this looks really wild, right? This is something that is kind of period like 90s that you wouldn't see
Yeah.
today. So I'm like, let me
Mhm.
include this. Sometimes it's just like this is a character that we know, either a main character or a recurring character, who's wearing something I've never seen before.
Right.
So I want to get this. Other times it's just I don't know a specific type of person. Like I most of the characters on Seinfeld are white, right? But like sometimes they'll have a black character or like an Asian character, and I'm kind of interested in how those are portrayed. Or like they have lesbian characters or gay characters, and just like what signaled that at this time in this place, So that's sometimes interesting to me. But yeah, it's all those things. Like I will go through the episode and just screenshot because I haven't seen it before. Even if I had, it's like not that I would know every shot
Right.
or whatever. So I'll take a lot of screenshots because sometimes I don't know when the best view of a certain fit or article of clothing is going to come up. So at the end, I'll often have like 30 screenshots
Mm.
for an episode, and Instagram, as you know, only allows 10 per post. So then I go through and I sometimes it's just like I have to choose one because I took 5 shots of the same fit. Which one's the best angle? And it's tough because the resolution's not great, and if the characters are moving at all, it looks blurry. So I don't know. Maybe there exists in some form like a super HD version of Seinfeld, but mine is like SD. So,
I know that, well, the Netflix, they did like upscale it to, I don't know if it's just like some weird AI thing. They did upscale it, but of course they did the thing that I hate, which is, as you mentioned, the
right.
aspect ratio.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's a non starter for me. Absolutely not. But uh, Yeah, so then I go through and I pick the 10 best, and I had been posting at certain points like some of the extra ones to my story. Like I said, it's it's gotten to be kind of a time suck, and a lot to commit to do it every day. I've done it. I've let myself take some days where I don't post. But yeah,
Social
I
media,
don't always
baby.
follow up with the extra ones. But it takes, it's like 45 minutes or an hour maybe. I mean, the episodes are 22 minutes and I'm pausing and like going frame by frame sometimes. And
Mm.
then at the end, editing them and then doing the post. So it's like maybe an hour to do one episode.
Sounds like
Yeah,
you could
it's
never be a social media manager.
No, I don't want to be that ever.
when I was watching through Get Back, I was like taking a bunch of screenshots, and I'm like, oh,
Mm,
this would be kind of fun to compile. But yeah, it's like it's tedious,
yeah.
and I mean, also Get Back is like every episode is like 3.5 hours
Yeah.
long,
It's like
so
9 hours of TV.
that's not gonna be very good. But
I
That would
I
be, I had that
thank
thought
you
too,
for the
though.
dedication.
Yeah. That would be a sick account or
Well,
post or
actually, I
whatever to do with
guess
Get Back.
I guess it if you did Get Back, it would you would they don't wear that many outfits.
That's
It's not like
true.
Seinfeld where there's like a
a
couple
different
different
one.
outfit.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
of most of the episodes that's only like what, like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So hey, if anyone wants to do the Get Back style Instagram account,
I mean, Spencer, you should just do it. Imagine that
I don't want
get
to do.
back out get back fits powered
That's what
by
it's gonna be
Style and
called.
Direction. Yeah.
Get Back
Well,
fits.
I briefly entertained the idea of doing that for Frasier, but I realized there's way more episodes of Frasier than there are Seinfeld. And unlike Seinfeld, they have a full first season instead of just 5 episodes. So I'm like, fuck, dude.
And
Like
eventually
it's
you'd
gonna be
have to go back
crazy.
to Cheers.
Yeah, then I'd have to go back. But hey, yeah. So speaking of that, do you think you'd ever do more? I mean, obviously there's a finite amount of Seinfeld
Yeah.
episodes here.
Well, I gotta be honest. That's one of the things that I like about it, that it has an end point, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just
Nice.
came
It's
up
like
with this. I thought
life.
it would be fun. Yeah, and it has been fun. But I don't want to. I don't have some aspiration of, I don't know, turning this into like a side hustle, which I think is one of the most annoying things about um, social media culture. I mean, there's many annoying
Amen.
things about it, right? But just the internet in general these days, right? Like, fewer and fewer things are able to just be for
To
fun
just
and just kind of be
exist.
what they
Yeah.
are. Yeah, people want to everybody's trying to go viral so that they can then get, if nothing else, you get people in your DMs being like, can you put an ad under this tweet for $20?
Yeah.
Like, that's
If
everybody's aspiration.
if your novelty account gets big enough, you get a write up in like New York Mag or something.
Right, and then maybe you get a book deal to do
Yeah.
like, or whatever, and it's all so, I don't know. The internet used to have more stuff that was just fun and just free, and like, then it just existed. It was just preserved. So that's where I see this going. At the end, it'll be 180 posts for 180 episodes, and it'll be a little digital museum of the fashion of Seinfeld, of through my own kind of filter, of course. But I think that's nice that somebody will be able to come to this as long as Instagram stays around or whatever, and just kind of go through the whole series and look at the fits. So I don't see it extending or mutating. I think that would be kind of crass and kind of cheapen it. And also, I just don't want to do it forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I
Yeah.
know. Did you always have like curated by Young Chomsky on it? I don't remember if you always had that in your bio. Like, was it or at first was it there going to be like a distinction between the two accounts, but then afterward a while you just said this is
Oh,
mine.
I think I gave myself credit in the bio right away.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I've tweaked that a couple times, but it is interesting because I think obviously when I started the account, I posted it to my main account and I was just like, everybody follow this. And I posted it to Twitter, and it was mostly people who already followed me on Instagram, but
Right.
pretty quickly it took on a life of its own. And I have more followers on Jawnfeld than I do on Young Chomsky,
Huh.
which is cool, but it's also kind of fucked up. Like, when hot women follow Jawnfeld and they don't follow me, like, that's super fucked up. So that should not happen.
Do you message them? And it's just like, hey.
I should message them as Jawnfeld and be like, hey, this is Jerry Seinfeld. I'm here with my friends, Cosmo Kramer. Anyway, but no, I don't do that. I do not. Just to be clear, I don't do that.
You don't DM women.
Ever, as a rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, Yeah, seriously, I don't. But it yeah, it grew beyond my um my existing followers, which is cool.
Have you
So
gotten hit up for any like, hey, I want to write an article about this, or like, hey, I want to put a sponsored post on your
Oh
story?
yeah,
Have you gotten those?
not per se. That would be cool though. But I have gotten contacted by some cool people actually. Like there's a guy, I think
cool
Nick is
people.
his
What's
name,
that
who
like?
runs a little vintage shop in Manhattan.
Hmm.
And he DM'd me and said that he had some Seinfeld, a gift to send me. And I was like, either this is an insane person who wants to murder me because he hates Seinfeld, or a cool person who wants to give me a gift. So I gave him my address, and it was the latter. He sent me some dead stock Seinfeld greeting cards, and then I visited
Oh,
his
that's
shop, and
cool.
I bought a little Seinfeld hat. So that was a cool connection to make, and maybe we'll do something in the future. It's called Select Stock NYC. It's a neat little shop that has kind of vintage, like more like streetwear and casual stuff, and like sportswear.
That's fun.
Yeah, that
Yeah, so
that
that
is
was
really
neat.
cool.
This is, I guess, kind of unrelated. Have you seen the Instagram account for the woman who she was like one of the costume designers on Seinfeld?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Hmm.
She's
think
posted a bunch
that's
of behind the scenes stuff.
the Jawnfeld account only follows two people, and it's young Chomsky and her.
There you go. Yeah, that's a
Nice.
good account too. Have you
Yeah,
have you talked to her? Has
I
she reached
haven't.
out, or do you know if she
No,
knows about the John Feld account?
I don't. I don't know. I'd be happy to collab with her,
Yeah.
but we haven't. We haven't yet. She
How?
has a lot of. She has a kind of a big account, I think.
Yeah, she does. But right before we jump into like actual character outfits here and everything, how did you land on the name John Feld? Because
Um,
I don't know if this was a joke, but I think when I said like sign fits, which I think is a
well,
dumb name, but I think it's kind of hilarious.
no, they had that. I think it was original. I wanted to call it Sign Fits,
Nice.
but I think Sign Fits was taken.
Oh no.
Or
Oh,
let me see.
yeah.
Uh,
Let's do a quick little check.
yes, Sign Fits is taken and has one post and zero followers. Oh, and the post just says, "Give me money for this." Um, right?
Oh,
No,
that's
give
what that
me.
says.
No, I don't know what
Wait,
that says. It looks like give
it's
me.
actually kind of scary.
Yeah, I
I
can't
don't want to look
tell.
at this anymore.
No,
Yeah,
you got to keep looking at it.
like
Did you
nobody's
look at
gonna
it,
pay you
Spencer?
for that account,
Yeah.
brother. So good luck. But I wanted to call it Sign Fits, and then I forget. I called it. It wasn't originally called Jawnfeld. It was called something else. I think maybe I
Oh,
called it like
that's right.
Sign Fits 2 or something.
Mm.
Um, and then I was like, this is dumb, Jawnfeld, and that feels good. So that's
Very
what I've.
courting the throwing fits guys a little bit, Johns and everything.
All right, they don't own that term. Those are I like those guys. First of all, I mean, John, I don't know how many people know this. I feel like people know this, but maybe some people don't. Like, it's funny because there's some people who have no idea. Like, what does that mean? What does John Feld mean? And like, obviously, we in the menswear world, we know a John means like a piece of clothing. But I'm from Philly, grew up near Philly and lived in Philly, and in
Philadelphia.
yeah, in Philadelphia, the word John. I mean, I think it came from Philly and then got adapted more specifically for menswear. But a John in Philly just means like anything. Um,
Yeah, like that
so you could
thing
be
or
like,
whatever.
if you want somebody to give you like the TV remote, be like, pass me the John, or, give me the TV John, or like, yeah, I got this new John. It's not clothing specific. It's literally like
Right.
any
Well,
noun.
yeah, speaking of comedians, I remember listening to an episode of Comedy Bang Bang where Scott and Paul Tompkins are talking, and they specifically bring it up. And I remember like this being like 3 years ago or something, like right when I was like starting to be more acquainted with like throwing fits, and I was like, holy shit, this is like a
They know
fucking
the word.
crossover here.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they know the word. Um,
Yeah, I think I first
well,
But
ran
really,
into
it's
it.
us who know the word.
Yeah. I think I ran into it like on Reddit, on like male fashion Reddit years
yeah,
ago, and I was confused because I knew it from Philly, and it was like, I want to say there was a thread about the store Self Edge, and which is like a high end denim store, and people kept talking about Johns, and I was like, what? I don't get it. Like, is this like, what does this have to do with Philadelphia? Uh, but it didn't, and then I figured it out.
I mean, whenever I'm talking to someone, I'm asking them, what does this have to do with Philadelphia? That's the first
Yeah,
question I always ask people.
yeah.
You're just always, any kind of thing, right? Like, what does that have to do?
That's
What's
like
boba?
supposedly Jeffrey Epstein would go to these like science conferences. These he would organize all these
Uh-huh.
intellectuals, right? And then there was just reported in some article that he would interrupt and just be like, "What's that got to do with pussy?" I mean,
So
it's
he was
not.
just a jock bullying a bunch of nerds. That was his. That
Yeah.
was one of his many
Well, I mean,
crimes.
yeah, he was a rich con artist, but like it's dark because of Jeffrey Epstein did a
Of
horrible
horrible things.
crimes, but it's very funny just like as a way of obviously out of context and like just taking the kind of wind out of the sails of some of these kind of elite high
Yeah.
society types who hung out with this guy who was just a total fucking moron, and we were like, what's that got to do with pussy? Anyway.
That's actually, I mean, I do have one more thing on that. I remember talking to a menswear guy, um, and he straight up said like he stopped going to menswear events because he's like, where the hell the women at? Like, there's no one
Yeah,
here.
you're barking up
That
the wrong
that
tree, brother.
that guy was Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah,
Yeah, that guy.
that man's
Oh
name.
man.
Yeah,
Well, let's.
not the right hobby if you're. I mean, maybe like in an indirect way, right? But yeah, I went to the Drake's
Oh
event
yeah.
and there were no chicks there. Very
Was that
disappointing.
surprising to you, or?
Yeah, that's why I went. I was like, there's gonna be some hot chicks at the fucking
They're gonna be
Drake's.
here buying neckties.
Yeah.
Actually, I was at I think I told you guys I was at the Armory sample sale, and there were
Mm.
like 3 women in there. I think they were just kind of waiting for their boyfriends. But I was like, you
Mm.
know what? This is our space. You ladies need to.
It's like when you
Because
go to Nordstrom and you see a guy sitting on a bench outside of the changing room.
yeah, it's like we need to preserve our spaces. Is all I'm trying to say. At like the
Yeah.
Armory sample sale, come on, get out of here.
I don't want to hear anything about. Bro, that jacket's too big on you. What are those shoulders drooping? Hell no. This is what's supposed to be like. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
exactly. You wouldn't understand.
Well, speaking of understanding, let's go into it here.
Let's understand these fits.
Well, so obviously,
Ethan,
I
your
mean,
segues are getting so professional. You've been doing
oh,
this
thank you.
podcast for a while.
I
Sorry.
love it. Someone tell that to Job. So obviously, when you look at like Seinfeld core or like inspiration, you have two main characters people tend to look at, right? You got George, who is like the trad man, and of course you've got Kramer, who is a Cosmo Kramer.
He is
Mhm.
Cosmo.
What's his first name? What's like the
Well, no,
original
it's
name?
Cosmo Kramer.
Yeah,
No,
you
it's like
don't find out
Kessler.
though. Oh,
In
I don't
in
know.
the first season, they call him like Kessler or something on the pilot or whatever.
Oh,
Uh,
I think his name was I. Did they also call him Kramer in the pilot, or was it only
No,
Kessler?
I think they just said Kessler, and then like episode 2, it's like just straight up Kramer after
oh, I
that,
don't
and
remember
then you
that,
don't
Because
hear
but
that
later
could have
on.
been something, if I'm remembering it correctly. I think that the guy that Kramer is based on, who is like Larry David's neighbor, was
mhm.
named Kessler or something.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
maybe they started out by just naming him after the real guy, and they were like,
but you
we
don't
should
find
change that.
out that his first name's Cosmo until like season 6.
Yeah. But yeah, you got Kramer, who is kind of like a
He's the
he looks
vintage
like
head.
the vintage head looks like he's straight up SFC, man. Scott Fraser
It's so
collection.
like people have tagged Scott Fraser in the comments of Jawnfeld a lot, and I almost feel bad that he doesn't he doesn't follow the account, but it's uncanny. I mean, it
Yeah,
is
it's
very much. Some of them look literally like things that he's making.
Well,
dude.
it's
I like this rewatch. Yeah, I've just been like in awe of Kramer's shirt collection. Like that,
Yeah.
the kind of shit that like now if you sold that, if he like had a booth with all this shit at Rose Bowl, he would leave.
Yes.
He'd like sell like fucking like $10,000 worth of merch, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like all these beautiful like 40s and 50s like rayon aloha shirts that I wish I had in my closet.
And he
yeah.
wears a lot of high-waisted like pleated trousers. It's
Yeah.
and then some very bold sport coats. But also yeah, it all looks very cool on him. I mean, Michael Richards is how tall? He's a tall guy and like tall and thin, and it's just like a very I don't know. It's hard to imagine. I guess like going back to something we were talking about before, how this looked to people at the time. I mean, I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
broadly, right? He's supposed to look eccentric, and obviously he does look eccentric. But I think you could wear exactly that today, and I guess to certain people you'd still look eccentric, but in a lot of
Yeah.
ways you'd look very trendy.
I would say, because I mean, even looking at him, it's kind of one of those things where, like, for example, like I think Spencer and I, maybe more like me, right? Like I dress very kind of vintage inspired, but it's still kind of weird to some people.
Hmm.
Um, Kramer's style, even though it is kind of trendy, it still isn't exactly how modern guys would like incorporate vintage nowadays. I don't think.
Hmm.
It's still. I mean, to me, it's like it's still very tailored. You know, there's still like, instead of wearing it with like selvage jeans, he is wearing like Hollywood waist pants
There's
or
the
like
Yeah,
episode where he
Donegal
gets the
pants,
skinny
the
like
skinny
raw denim
jeans.
jeans.
Yeah,
I
So
haven't gotten there yet, so don't no spoilers.
no
spoilers.
spoilers.
But
Yeah,
Kramer
but
like exclusively wears camp collar shirts,
Yeah.
yeah,
untucked.
and they are almost always, yeah, like 40s, 50s.
And a lot of
Um,
what looks like, yeah, like 40s or 50s like trousers too.
Uh-huh.
and then the jackets though are mostly like 50s, 60s when you
I
look
mean,
at
I
them.
think the like the characterization is just that he's like a guy that gets all his clothes secondhand, and I think it's
Yes.
like he's like in the '90s, like you would still get stuff that old in like
Yeah.
Goodwill and
I
thrift stores.
I was gonna say, this reminds me of, when Spencer and I first went, or started getting acquainted with the vintage community in California. They would say all of like the glory days of like the late 80s and 90s, where like you could find like belt back suits like in immaculate condition, because like all the guys, all those, I guess boomers, I guess, or I guess the
Greatest
generation before them,
Generation,
the great generation,
yeah.
started to die or started to give away their clothes, so you would see all this kind of stuff. And so Kramer is kind of that guy, but instead of doing it like the rockabilly way, that I guess maybe like the 90s people in California would do it, it comes across a bit more hep catty and a little bit more
It
kind
because
of teddy boy with the hair a little
yeah,
bit, kind of, or
there's some
whatever.
outfits where he's just like kind of dressed like a 50s dad. Like it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
not like
50s dad.
he's not doing like oh this I mean I guess he is because he has the crazy hair and the stubble and he's doing all the Michael Richards shit. But it's
Yeah.
not like this is a wacky take on a 50s dad. It's just like he's wearing,
Well, yeah,
you know,
usually when he's
just
trying to
like
be
the exact same
professional.
yeah,
Yeah, but
exactly.
then, but normally, right? Like his formula is like bold shirt, which does, and you pointed this out, Young Chomsky, where like he does rewear shirts, which is really cool to see it, like,
Uh-huh.
how he does in each one, and then he'll wear it with like either like a Donegal or like an atomic tweed jacket or a Hollywood jacket, which I think is one of the, I think the coat that he wants back, or
Yes.
it's either that or
Yes.
like a car coat or something like that, and
Yeah.
then of course like kind of like dark colored trousers, white socks, and then some kind of lace up, I think, or is it really loafers?
I can't
There's one. I have one screenshot where you can see it pretty well, because that's one of the things. Like I try to get. I wanted at first to get full outfit screenshots as much as possible, right? But just by nature of the way it's shot and the resolution of it, a lot of times when you can see the full fit, it's you don't see that much detail. And there's so many more kind of waist up shots. So I try to, like, when they're seated, obviously it's easier. So this is my post for season 6, episode 5. The first image, you see Kramer seated next to Poppy, and you can see he's wearing looks like
Yeah.
black derbies and white socks. Kramer's always wearing white socks. But yeah, I think one of the interesting things, and maybe kind of obvious, right? But like Kramer's clothing is secondhand. It's thrift. It's vintage, but not the way vintage is today, right? And I think that
mhm.
would have read a lot differently if you were living in Manhattan in the early '90s and dressing like on somebody's grandpa's clothes. That read as more like eccentric, whereas now I think obviously, like, it wouldn't be surprising. It would be cool, or just like you see that a lot. I think like vintage became, and I don't know, maybe I'm totally off base, but like there's the kind of place that vintage clothing holds in fashion and culture at a certain point became more like a cool thing, and before that I think it was more just like you are poor or you don't care about clothes, or
Mhm.
it wasn't hip, right?
Yeah. That's really interesting about Kramer. I mean, and he also like just straight up owns it, right? Like that's kind of his whole thing, where he just
Yes.
is so confident.
I'm
And
he does like the sitcom thing of like a character that loves to wear costumes. Like I feel like a lot of
Mm.
sitcoms have
yeah,
one character that's like, "Oh, I can't wait to put on a costume." But I think it's like kind of fun where he's like where they the episode where Jerry thinks that they stole the like porcelain like the
The
Elaine's
statue.
friend's boyfriend, yeah, stole the porcelain statue from his house, and then Kramer has to like dress up like Dragnet and like
Uh-huh.
go intimidate him. But it's like that's kind of the sad head mindset, just like creating the occasion for yourself or whatever.
Cinematic dressing. You
Yeah.
gotta, you take the opportunity to step into a character.
I can't find it anymore, but there was a really great Kramer fit, I think in season 6, where he's like kind of breaking formula, but he's wearing just like a cashmere V-neck with like a white tee underneath. It still kind of looks like very 50s, 60s.
Oh,
Um,
he wears that fit in the first season, in season
oh,
1,
that's the first
episode
season?
4.
Oh, never
Yeah.
mind. I'm looking at the wrong thing then.
Yeah, if you go all the
Um,
way to the beginning of the account, that's the cover image for.
yeah, but that's like different. That's like very different than stuff he wears later. But
Yeah.
I kind of wish we saw more of this Kramer too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's interesting in the very very early episodes. It's just kind of like, oh well, they hadn't quite figured out some of the characters yet. But even by the end of season 1, you see them kind of in their more typical attire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now typical attire sounds like trad to me.
Okay.
You gotta love these ones.
You're you're
But
having fun with it today.
yeah. So okay, so now George, right? George Costanza, kind of like the menswear mood all the time, right? Like he has, yeah, he's like Ivy Trad done for like just kind of a schlubby dude, but it's actually, if you just remove George Costanza's face and body from it, it's actually a lot of solid fits,
Yeah,
like a lot of khakis, a lot of plaid shirts. I mean, it is kind of dad like, kind of reminds me a little bit of like Marty Crane from Frasier. Again, plugging our future Frasier episode, but like there's a lot of like, yeah, like Pendleton shirts, just like, button down collar plaid shirts with khakis or dark trousers.
yeah. Well,
Maybe
there's
like white
two.
socks or tan socks with like loafers or something.
Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to remember if I've seen George with white socks. I don't recall, but there's two very distinct Georges, right? Like you've got business George
Yeah.
and casual George,
Mm-hmm.
and business George too. I mean, again, this stuff kind of reads very differently now than it probably did 30 years ago in terms of the connotation of these different things. But he had this corduroy sport coat, this brown cord sport coat
Yep. Hmm.
that he wore a lot, and it looks like he's got a knit tie, like a burgundy knit tie, gray
Yep.
trousers, and this brown cord sport coat with like um, flapped, like bellowed pockets, and this kind of multicolored, multi-striped shirt that he wore a bunch. Like I totally dig that fit and would wear that. Although it's like a spread collar, I think he mostly wore button-down collars. But then casual George, he wears a lot of kind of bold plaids. He wears sneakers, jeans. He's got some great jackets, like this
Mm-hmm.
red, like barn coat.
Yeah, he has a lot of barn coats. Like I feel
Yeah,
that's the signature George jacket.
yeah. I mean, all of
Yeah.
them wore a lot of bold colors, which looks good on the screen and maybe is a little indicative of the time period. But yeah, casual George, always tucked in shirt, a lot of sneakers. He wears some Fair Isle sweater a few times, which is a cool look. Um, yeah, I George is pretty relatable as a fashion guy, I think, to a lot of.
Yeah, like he also wears a lot of like unbuttoned cardigans or cardigans in
Mhm.
general over his plaid shirts when he's casual. I mean, again, I do love his business attire. I think there's a lot. Obviously, it's 90s, right? It's not exactly Esquire Man, but you see a lot of like the Esquire Man ideas, like
I think it's a lot of that is just in like the pattern mixing and the
exactly,
color
yeah,
combinations, etc. Where obviously the sport coats, the shirts aren't cut. I mean, the shirts are okay, but like the sport coats usually aren't cut like the greatest. Like
yeah, big
uh,
shoulders and
big
Yeah,
everything,
big ass
but
no buttoning
shoulders.
stance.
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, the
But it still
combinations
looks.
of like, yeah, like paisley with like the Bengal stripes or pencil stripes, etc. I think are really cool to see
And
on George.
as we've said before, like it's kind of fun to see like business attire that's not just either like a gray suit or
Yeah.
fucking hashtag menswear, like tan chinos with fun socks.
Yeah. Also,
Yes.
I guess this tracks for the period, but it was kind of striking to me to see on so many of the suit jackets and sport coats, very low gorge. And I wanted to bring that up
Hmm.
because I was like, only Ethan and Spencer and their audience will understand what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
like every time somebody's wearing a suit jacket, I'm like, damn, low fucking gorge on that thing.
Yeah. Did you think that you liked it, or like what
I
did you
mean,
think
it
seeing
was
it?
just it just stood out. Like the first thing that stands out from the tailoring, right, is the shoulders. That they're
Yeah.
really bold and big and padded. But then the second thing that caught my eye was the low gorge, and yeah, and pretty big lapels. But I don't know. I don't know if that made me want to like wear jackets like that, but it definitely is a somewhat obvious difference, at least to me, from kind of more modern um, jackets. And one of the other things too, maybe we'll circle back to this, but I tried to get screenshots of the women. Like obviously, I relate to the women's outfits in a different way, but so many of the women in the show are wearing kind of like menswear. Like Elaine wears a lot of suits and sport coats and like double
Yeah.
breasted, and they're interesting. Or like some of the female backing characters. Like I'm looking at season 5, episode 20. This was like this. I forget the character's name, but I think this woman Jerry was dating, and she's got this great like gun check sport coat over like a cream roll neck, and there's a lot of good looks like that on the women in the show, which is interesting. I think that's definitely a little bit that's less common in today's fashion. I think those kind of very strong masculine suiting looks on
Hmm.
women.
Yeah, you get that kind of peak, yeah, women's style, like businesswoman attire in
Yes,
that era,
it's like
and then you
I'm
got
in
it
the
kind of,
workplace.
yeah, and you
I'm
get kind of
as my shoulders
Elaine's.
are as big as a man's. That's what they were saying.
That's what they are. I mean,
I'm
that's
putting
I'm
why
some
strong enough to
cultural.
lift an ox.
Yeah, this is some cultural context for our Zoomer listeners. Um, yeah, it's called feminism. Look it up.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Um, no, I was gonna say, and Elaine's kind of got the kind of more frumpy, or kind of, I guess, kind of keeping in tone with everyone else. But everyone else kind of looks more frumpy, and she's got like her Mary Janes with the white socks,
Yes.
which feels very, I mean, kind of book core in a sense. Or like my girlfriend kind of takes after Elaine kind of naturally in the attire, without her ever even seeing Seinfeld, which is kind of, I mean, it's like the type of person. I hope she's
Yeah.
not like Elaine though.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, one of Elaine's
It's
character
cringeworthy.
traits that they try to reinforce over time is, I mean, Elaine is a professional woman and is like somewhat successful at certain points in her career. Like when we start out, she works for a publishing house, and she's kind of portrayed as more competent professionally than George or
Yeah,
Kramer. But also as a person, she's shown as like not being graceful. That's like a plot point
yeah,
in one episode. She doesn't have grace, and she's
Hmm.
kind of one of the guys, I guess. Which so it's interesting because yeah, she is kind of well put together in her work attire, and a lot of like menswear, a lot of suiting, but then also has this kind of slouchiness, if you will, or disheveledness or kind of frumpiness that makes her like more approachable, but also it's kind of part of her one of her character foibles, right? Is being kind of like graceless.
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's cool.
Well,
I always think of I just the clip of her dancing.
Yeah.
And
oh
George
yeah,
George's response, "Sweet fancy Moses." That's like constantly. That's like one of the Seinfeld bits that never leaves my head.
yeah. Well, then let's move on to Jerry now. And the more I watch the show, like I everyone loves Kramer, everyone loves George, but I think my favorite has to be Jerry, and not
Really?
for his regular attire, but because of when he wears a suit. I
His
think that there
stand
is
up.
something kind of interesting about when he has to wear a suit. Not just, I mean,
Mm.
the opening, like the stand-up bits, sometimes some of them are awful and sometimes they're actually really good. I think if you look back, if there was like a tracking thing of like what I've shared from the Jawnfeld account, it would,
Hmm.
a lot of it would be some of the Jerry stand-up parts, because I feel like that's the most kind of Esquire man, that's more on the bolder side, like not like the regular kind of everyman like George style, but
Should we
there's
break
still
down what he wears for stand up? Like what's the typical Jerry? Because I feel
yeah,
like
tip.
dark shirt, jeans.
No, I don't think he wears jeans when he's doing
Does it?
stand
He
up.
doesn't. I feel like I've seen something where he's like wearing like a dark red sport coat with
Oh
like
yeah,
a
maybe with the red
like
sport
with
coat attire, but sometimes
yeah.
he wears like a dark suit. Sometimes it's like a brown sport coat, like a dark brown or caramel colored
Yeah.
DB, with like I
Yeah, a
remember I
lot of
shared one.
DBs.
Yeah, a lot of
Mhm.
DBs, which is probably why I love it.
Uh-huh.
I just got my brown DB from Hall Madden, but like yeah, he wears I think there's one I shared recently, the brown DB with like a blue, like a classic like French or darker than French blue, like 90s point collar shirt with like a paisley or foulard tie. And I remember like two people said that to me like this sucks. Like some people just DM'd me and I'm like,
Who the fuck said
I
that?
like it.
I will come to your house. Uh, yeah, it's interesting, right? Because some of the stand up, some of the things he wears for stand up are very like this was a thing for comedians right in the 90s where it's like
Yeah.
I'm a so I'm wearing a suit but it's like wacky I'm because I'm a comedian so it's like a bright red sport coat or he wears like a wacky tie. Some of them
Mhm.
are very it's like I'm goofy, I'm a comedian, but then some of them are very more, you know, kind of standard, kind of normal and wouldn't look out of place today except for
Well,
maybe some of those details of the suiting.
I think I read somewhere where like I think Jerry did say like he wore suit attire for his stand up because it was supposed to be like different. Like he wanted it
Mm.
Mhm.
to look like cuz his stuff is like, it's what's it,
He's going into
observational
work.
humor.
Yeah, it's he doesn't
Yeah.
work blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like I mean,
It's
I
clean
think
comedy.
it's still wilder than like obviously more of the corporate characters like Rob Balaban's character that you'll see later on, the TV executive. Um, but I will say, I mean, it is wild, but it still feels a little bit more grounded. It feels like a little bit like a yuppie, I mean, or a yuppie adjacent professional who is kind of, yeah, who is doing stand up that's not like super outrageous. He's just kind of talking about whatever happened to him during his normal life, that he finds funny. And I kind of like that idea. Again, like I don't know if I'm like obsessed with the idea of like a regular guy wearing suits, even though
You're obsessed.
I'm like the
That's your
most bold dresser
that's
of
your
all
kink.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think it's fun to see that, and especially because it contrasts against his more like normal, unvaried, regular appearance, where he's wearing like in the first few seasons like a mock neck and jeans and like white sneakers, and then later on you get like the OCBD or like the work like the chamois whatever
Chamois.
chamois
Yeah. Yeah.
work shirt tucked into
Chimneys.
pants. Yeah.
Well, it's
Um.
very clear that Jerry, I mean, like most of the characters, I guess, has multiple different types of style for these different settings, right? But
Yeah.
also,
Hmm.
Jerry, again, like his character is explicitly portrayed as a guy who really cares about his clothes and is into
Mhm.
fashion. And there's a bit, you know, I've been sitting here thinking about different episodes that are circle around or centered on some kind of clothing related plot. There's the mom and pop shop where Jerry wants to get his sneakers cleaned, and there's like a little aside about like why does a grown man own so many sneakers? And Kramer says, "Oh yeah, he has a Peter Pan complex." But there's also a bit another episode where he talks about his favorite T-shirt,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golden Boy, right, and how it's so old and it's so broken in. And then he loses it. Or there's multiple different episodes about dry cleaners and like dealing with the dry cleaners and just being kind of precious about your
Yeah.
clothing, which is a
Because
certain type of person, right? Because not
he's
everybody's
a
like
very
that.
fussy guy on the show.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bigger part of his character is that he's just like a neat freak. He's kind of obsessive, but specifically, there's a lot of stuff around his clothing. Whereas like Kramer isn't portrayed that way anyway. Like he doesn't care. He just like wants if he hears somebody's giving something away, he's like, I'll take
Yeah.
it. He's not like, oh, I'll take it if the buttons are harmonious. Otherwise, I won't.
I mean, going back to the suede jacket thing, the resolution of that is that he gives Kramer the the ruined suede jacket
Yes,
that he wore in the
yes,
rain.
yeah.
And you know,
Jerry,
it doesn't look bad on him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry also, just in terms of things that he really was did all the time. I mean, he's almost always wearing sneakers when he's not on stage. He wore sweater vests a bunch, which um, I think his fits with sweater vests look pretty good. And I think you mentioned mock necks. Like he would was constantly wearing a mock neck
Mhm.
early on. Um,
I've seen
which
there are a couple episodes in the early seasons where he's doing like turtleneck base layer.
yes,
Yeah.
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 But then like when
With
he'll go
yeah.
out to a restaurant and usually wear like a pretty
Like a
subdued sport coat,
Yeah,
like a
it's
classic
I think
pattern.
I remember the one where he's dating that girl whose dad doesn't wash his hands in the
Yeah,
bathroom, and he
Poppy.
does wear it's kind of an iconic fit where he's wearing like a dark turtleneck with like a blue Glen plaid sport
Mm,
coat. And I mean I do like that. I mean like this idea is, you know, I may have never seen Seinfeld, but of course, like, when I was a kid, I'd watch like regular television with my parents, early episodes of Friends and everything. But like, I think a lot of my ideas do like resonate with like how Jerry wears his stuff. Again, it's still like I'm looking at the one where he's wearing the Armani suit and he has a very mad expression because he has to take the guy out for dinner multiple times.
Mhm.
Um, but like it kind of tracks with this idea that what I am into doesn't seem that far off, and there's precedent not just from Esquire Man, but from like guys like Jerry, where like it's not like the fashion guy in the show, but he kind of is in general because he just wears the clothes. And I do appreciate that. I mean, one thing I did notice straight away, not from the first couple of season or episodes, is he loves wearing a thin Western belt with everything,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
is really cool.
Yeah, he
Um,
wears the Western belt. Yeah.
yeah, I mean
I
it's.
think that was just like that must have been a trend in the 90s because I watched through all of Larry
Mhm.
Sanders in 20 I guess last year. Um and he's a big fan of the Western belt as well.
It really does make you wonder at what point did guys go, no, we got to go more than 1 inch because
Yeah.
I don't remember, I don't know if I told you guys this. I don't think I've told Spencer where I got into like this really big debate with this girl I was hooking up with about belt widths,
This is
which
a
is a very
Seinfeld thing.
Seinfeld. It's a
Yeah.
very Seinfeld thing. No, like, okay, so here's the full story. Like, I was, obviously, I think there's a couple of inspo pictures of Jerry in my belt article, and this will date how old this occasion happened. But I went over to this girl's house, and she's like, "Oh, so what are you working on for your little blog?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm writing this
Condescending.
article on belts." I'm like, "Oh, what about belts?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm writing about how I think thin belts are really cool." And she goes like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, because they just look cooler." She goes, "Well, wouldn't a thick belt be better?" I'm like, "Not really." And she goes, "Well, there's more
It's
material." And
It's
I'm
low
more
like,
key fat
belts.
phobic. First of
"Yeah."
all,
And I'm like, "Why? I don't like just because there's more material doesn't mean it's a better garment."
oh, that's where you're wrong.
Yeah.
More
Cuz I mean
material
if you get
equals better garment.
a big enough belt, a wide enough belt, that's two belts. Maybe sometimes three sometimes. You can make three belts
Yeah.
out of one.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
cost
first of
efficiency.
all, you have to understand that 20 yards of linen equals one coat, and
Exactly.
once you've
So,
established that, I think the rest follows.
It falls into place.
Let us little deep
um,
cut out there for some of you listeners. Sorry.
but I thought that was kind of a funny thing to happen to me, especially after I started watching Seinfeld. I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty bizarre experience for me to have.
So did you
Um,
like stop seeing this person because of this argument? Because you
well,
would be
what's actually
justified.
I mean, I only hooked up with her like twice. What was really funny is that, um, not to like go off topic a little bit, but she did say
Go
that
off,
she is
King.
more stylish than me because she can wear multiple different like she's like,
Widths.
oh well, your whole thing is menswear, but like for me, I can be goth and I can be cottagecore or whatever. And I'm like, well, I
Uh-huh.
don't see it that way. I see myself wearing like Ivy and workwear and everything. And she's like,
All
well, to me,
menswear.
you're just yeah. She's like, you're just wearing
It's
all menswear.
it's the meme of two people looking at a list and one person the list just says like heavy metal and the other person's like death metal, like
Yeah,
progressive
doom,
metal.
sludge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
This is you and her. You're in
I
the
yeah,
meme.
I obviously did not see her very often after that. I mean, hey,
I remember when we went to Moe's restaurant. Fuck, I can't remember the name of the diner.
what the hell are you talking about?
The diner that they always go to in Seinfeld.
Monks.
Oh,
Monks. There you
Well,
go.
monks.
that's what it's called on the
Moe's.
show. Yeah.
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 We went to Monks and he talked about it's like it's the belts.
I
The
don't.
belts.
I'm not in on that joke, but I
I'm
do.
just I'm doing a modern Seinfeld thing right
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah.
Jerry gets an iPad.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. I just do want to say that I support you, Ethan. I literally cannot hang out with a woman if she doesn't have good menswear opinions, and yeah, I will leave someone immediately if they don't agree with me
I
about
uh I do have one
belt
more on that. I
width.
mean, not really. This probably is. I think we said this before too, where I was talking about like the punks and menswear, and she goes like, "How is wearing menswear punk at all?" And I was like,
That's a
"Oh
valid
well, there's
question.
there's precedent for it," and she unmatched me, and I'm like, I didn't get to defend my point. But to be fair, at the time, I
Damn.
wasn't as cool as I am now.
Well,
So jokes on.
defend it right now, and if she's listening, then she'll feel like a
There you
fucking
go.
asshole.
Well, I mean, hey, look out there. Who only the real rebellious people are wearing soft shoulders and long collars.
I
So
mean,
It's like,
I've always said conservatism is the new
ah,
punk rock.
fuck, Spencer. That's what I was
Did I
gonna.
get it? Yeah.
I'm always saying that. It literally is the new punk rock. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you're right.
Um, well, I also want to,
Fucking asshole.
on that note, I want to give some credit for all the other cool characters, like Jay Peterman wearing like, I mean, the
Jay
fictional Jay
Peterman.
Peterman.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
not up to that point in this
oh,
series.
you're not. Oh man, I mean,
So
I'm
no
really
spoilers,
curious to see
but I was
what you
just
think.
flipping out about Frank Costanza. Like Frank's fits are
Yeah.
Oh
great.
yeah. And
Um,
I mean, the thing about the beltless trench coat, like
yes,
The executive.
which is like, so that's, I feel like that, like I flipped through old clothing catalogs, that's absolutely what they would give the name, the
yeah,
name they would give to a coat like that.
yeah. But I don't know how like Frank, his style, like he was wearing this thing in the most recent episode that I
Oh, the
love. Like
safari
he,
suit, I think.
yeah, I guess that's what it is. But with like a shirt and tie under it, and he just wears a lot of like, I don't know, Ethan, you're probably better at with the terminology of these things, but I guess it's very kind of high mid-century style, and I think it's so
I mean,
great.
it's very 70s. I mean, with
Yeah.
Yeah, like
with
the
Yeah, I was
his
gonna
really
say,
dad.
it's like he
runaway
seems like,
collars and
he bought like a lot of his wardrobe in the 70s and just hasn't bought new clothes since.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you
I
see
guess
him
that's
wearing
it.
like an acrylic like cardigan with like a really long point collar shirt, which seems very like 70s. I mean, straight up with like a, I don't remember what the fucking foreman's dad, what's his name, the old man
Oh,
in that
Red.
70s show. Yeah, Red. Like it's straight up like what Red is. I mean, the characters are kind of the same too, kind of these curmudgeon-y, like easily upsettable old guys.
They're always getting really mad at everyone when they go in their basement to smoke weed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Although interestingly, so I have some screenshots. I think it was this was the first appearance of Frank Costanza in season 4, episode 22, by a different actor, and like totally
Huh.
different. The whole
Oh,
vibe
that's
was
right.
different. He's there's a few different screenshots in this post of him, and he wears cardigans and like brown trousers, like very
Kind of seems
high.
similar to what George already wears in a sense.
Yeah, and like that I guess would have made sense for George's dad to be, but I think that's the only episode that this guy appears, and then the next time we see
Yeah.
George's dad, it's Jerry Stiller, who is just so. His performance is maybe my favorite in the show. He's just so good, and I don't know, cracks me up and just reminds me
I
of
mean,
family members, I
yeah.
guess.
That's it there's that iconic like multiple takes where when George gets arrested with a prostitute, I think, and
I
Elaine
haven't
goes
seen
to
that.
pick him up, and they just try to keep starting like the dialogue, and Julie Louise Dreyfus just can't get it. Like she just keeps cracking up every time
Yeah,
he opens his mouth, which I think is really funny.
yeah.
um I think we already saw some of the like Rob Balaban's character, what's his name, the
Bob
NBC
Balaban.
executive.
I don't know the
Bob.
name of the character.
Yeah,
um
yeah, I forget. He's the NBC executive.
yeah, but I think I love his attire, especially all the other executives that you see in those scenes.
Uh-huh.
Um, Dalrymple, Dal,
Yes, yes,
yeah, Russell
Dalrymple.
Dalrymple. I love it. I mean, it's like, and every time I think when he gets scouted at the club by the executives, I think is really great too. I mean, I see some of the stuff he's wearing like a Glen check. There's so much tonal stuff here in the 90s, which I think is really interesting. Like,
Mhm.
excuse me, a brown suit with like a brown sport coat with a brown shirt and like a navy tie or something like that. I think it's really
Yeah.
um interesting to see. I mean, my dad did it. I think I did it when I was like a kid, like when I was like 4 or 5 years
Mhm.
old, dressing on my way to church or whatever. You see a lot of that stuff on there. um but
There's
the yeah, any
also
kind of character wearing a suit is really fun to watch.
yeah, there's also Mr. Pitt, who is Elaine's employer in season
That's right.
6, and he's portrayed as this kind of stodgy British kind of upper class guy. And so yeah, for menswear, he wears some like
I mean, he's, yeah, English.
yeah,
He's the Lane Price of the show.
yes,
Yeah, he is.
he is.
Fun tidbit here to connect to our other fandoms. That's Ian Abercrombie, who was the voice of Emperor Palpatine
Oh
for
shit!
his animated appearances on the original Clone Wars and the newer the Cartoon Network Clone
Oh, he's
Wars.
still around.
No,
Wow.
he passed away because he
Oh,
Okay.
was he died, and then he was replaced by I've said this before, but it was Tim Curry and Ian Abercrombie. Again, he's like a kindly British guy. Makes sense for Darth Sidious, but Tim Curry, a guy with a very iconic and nasally British accent, playing the Emperor does not sound good. And I'll have to show Spencer a clip from that later on. He presides over the he presides over the trial of Ahsoka
Oh,
Tano.
I've seen you've shown me that clip before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's like
he sounds
Ahsoka
crazy.
Tano, and I'm like, that's just straight up Nigel Thornberry as the Emperor right now. But yeah, Mr. Pitt's a really good. I mean, he's wearing like DBs, a lot of
Yeah.
contrast collar
I think
shirts.
yeah, but it's like I also like just seeing. I mean, Ethan talked about this with his obsession, but I love seeing all the like just like regular people who don't necessarily have to be wearing a sport coat. They're just like
Yeah.
throwing on like they're like George. Even when he's off duty, there are scenes of him just wearing a sport coat and sweater because that's just what he put on that morning.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
I think I like Uncle Leo as well. He's also kind of
Oh yeah,
he's a little bit like Frank Costanza, but like a more eccentric version, kind of
yeah,
this like a kooky old
scumbag
man,
kind of
but
stuff. Yeah,
yeah, but like in a way that again I think now reads as cool, um, and kind of like he's a quirked up white boy who's busting it down sexual style.
Yeah.
There's also speaking of DBs, the lawyer in Seinfeld. What's his name? Is it Jackie? Yeah,
Jackie
Jackie
Childs.
Childs. Jackie
Also haven't
Childs.
gotten to that point yet.
Damn it, man! We gotta get there. Well,
Okay,
maybe
well,
by the time the episode comes
focus on
out,
the first 6 seasons.
I don't
Uh,
even remember. Yeah, since I gotta rewatch it because like I need to look back at like I don't remember at what point characters are introduced and
well, if only
whatnot.
there was an account that organized it chronologically by episode.
We just need to get there. Stop taking breaks. You know.
In the mom and pop store where they talk about Jerry sneakers, that one of the other plot points in that one is he wears these cowboy boots and he's
Oh,
like, well,
that's
I
right.
want to be a cowboy.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's
I
just
remember that.
I'm just hitting again on the fact that it's so frequently brought up in the show, like what people are wearing or stuff like that.
And
Yeah.
I mean, looking through this, like, I don't know, the characters' wardrobes are pretty, like,
They're
extensive.
fleshed out.
Yeah.
They're fleshed out, which is really great. I mean,
Yeah.
we just our previous episode on cinematic dressing. It's like it's fun to see them do all of their different moods. Like again, going to the NBC meetings, going on dates, going to going to the opera, but through the lens of what that character would wear. And I think it's really fun to see. Again, this is what makes it a little bit more special to me than like Seinfeld, than Frasier, where it's kind of Frasier's
You
a
only
lot more
see him in one
consistent.
mood,
Yeah,
in one mode.
exactly. And
Yeah.
here again, yeah, you're seeing Jerry in cowboy boots. You're seeing him in the puffy shirt. You're seeing
Yeah.
him in a mock neck and everything. It really like it. That's why I think maybe it resonates with a lot of people. Like to see people literally taken from the '90s wearing an extensive wardrobe of the '90s through
Yeah.
different occasions in life. Do,
And that's what
do
the
you
show's about, the different occasions in life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, young Chomsky, as you're watching it, do you think that there's been any effect on how you put together your outfits or any kind of inspiration that you pull from?
That's a good question. I mean, well, the thing is, it could totally be happening without me even realizing it because
And you're incepted.
so many of these characters, like what they wear is pretty close. Like at one point, a couple times, I guess, I've put together fits that I was self-consciously doing Jerry or doing
Sure.
George, but it was trivial because I mean, like I have that Jerry wears a suede bomber a lot I don't know, in the first many seasons. And I like have that suede bomber. It's vintage. And there's a few times I think where he wears the suede. It's kind of this bright orange suede. He wears that with just like a blue Oxford shirt and khaki chinos. And like, yeah, I wore that. Or there's a fit where George is wearing like this kind of blue plaid flannel unbuttoned over a white t-shirt with like khaki pants and blue sneakers. I'm like, yeah, I wore that. So definitely, I mean, and part of it that we haven't talked about as much is literally the how things fit on these characters, which is kind of
Oh,
striking,
yeah.
the proportions. Like specifically, I don't know, the whole silhouette, right? But like the shirt, the fits of the shirts, especially on Jerry, I guess, because you see him wearing a lot of shirts without a jacket. It that stands out to me because the shoulders are always way extended, like dropped shoulders. That's just like the default. Like the shoulder seam is like several inches down his arm, and then like the shirt sleeve is just like super full, and the whole thing is very full, and it's like it looks like he's one or two sizes too big by my standards of fit. But at the same by the same token, my standards of fit over the past couple years have been going more that direction. I mean, even still, they look to me, I would say like that doesn't fit right, like size down.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting to watch, like my I have some vintage Brooks shirts that fit very full that I'm like more into wearing since I saw this. But even then, like I think I'd have to size up again um, on the Brooks to get the kind of fits that Jerry usually has. But that's interesting to me. I was talking to our friend Jason um, about this recently when I stopped in at Drake's and was chatting with him, and he was saying somebody else that maybe who like was working at the store or a different store who's been in the menswear like retail for a long time was saying like, oh yeah, back then you could just, if you didn't have somebody's size, you could just get two sizes up and just sell it to them and be like, yeah, this looks good. So which is just fascinating because my journey kind of like when I first got into menswear and like how things should fit, I was like, oh right, like everything should fit exactly conform to
Right.
my body. Like I was into very slim fits, and now I'm very much not. But it's still kind of wild. Some of the things, like again, particularly Jerry, I'm just like that shirt's too big. But the pants are, I don't know, I guess pretty middle of the road, kind of slim, but yeah, not like too striking in any direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's got like, even though his jeans are kind of like higher rise, like they're not like super high, maybe not as high as maybe what we would wear.
Yeah.
Um, and because I remember I was watching, I was watching Rain Man for the first time recently,
Hmm.
and Tom Cruise's character in that film wears a like, yeah, like a nice suit, whatever, it's pleated, but it seems almost by 90s standards, because it's like I think Rain Man's like 1989 or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, the rise seems a lot lower and the pants seem very trim. Like you can see like,
Hmm.
sometimes like his thigh in it. And Tom
Yeah.
Cruise is pretty, he's got a pretty good physique, especially during that time. So you can kind of, it looks a little slim on him. Um,
Yeah,
which is
the jeans are a
surprising.
little slim, and they. I'm scrolling through. Like Jerry's are hemmed pretty. I mean, some of the breaks on some of the pants are pretty full.
Yeah.
Um,
As
but
I mean,
and they're very like light wash or like mid. There's no dark wash
he does wear
jeans.
some black jeans
He
though.
does wear black
In
jeans
Oh,
some,
does he?
occasionally.
yeah,
Okay.
he does. I mean, yeah, can contrast it with like Kramer, where he wears, I think, like the proper size for
Yes.
his shirts, but the trousers are obviously like just a little bit too short. Or I mean, it's because he's very tall.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just very interesting. And then of course you have George, where everything kind of just fits normally, but it's just automatically schlubby just on his body.
You're
Um,
being so mean to Jason Alexander this episode. Like anytime you talk about it, it's like, yeah, the clothes are good, but that disgusting lump of flesh underneath.
Yeah.
If only we
Uh,
could do without that.
Well, Newman's also an interesting character. Speaking of disgusting
yes,
lumps of flesh, I mean, he's he's portrayed, his character is supposed to be this very repulsive guy, but
Yeah.
he has some pretty good fit. He wears a like a barracuda
like a
jacket a
G9.
lot,
Yeah,
and just like I think barracuda over like a plaid shirt or sometimes like a short sleeve plaid shirt, always tucked in. That's kind of Newman's vibe, but like it's pretty good. Like it works for him pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's again, like looking back over all this stuff, it's almost not sad, but like to see a time where guys, regular people would always. I mean, also these characters are older than we are, or maybe not you,
Yeah,
but
no, they're like a little older than me.
like everyone is wearing like trousers and button-up shirts. Everyone wears a suit when they're going out to dinner,
Yeah,
and and maybe
we
that's
need to
one
go
reason why.
back. We need to return to tradition
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
No.
'90s. That's funny
Um,
to be like a
A
Be
return
like a
guy.
return guy for the 90s.
But
Yeah.
instead of
Like that
posting
exists though.
Coca-Cola ads from the 50s, you're posting screenshots from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could level that against me, but
Right.
We
But
just need to
yeah,
like put the VHS filter over it and add some like dumbass text at the bottom. Like
yeah,
this is what they took from you. And
and
then
make it more racist.
yeah, and then
Just like dog whistle white supremacy in it.
that's when the account's really gonna
yeah.
blow up.
Like this is when men were men, and picture of Jerry Seinfeld.
But yeah, no, I just think it's very interesting to see like the kind of the contrast. And but you are seeing people kind of dress like this a little bit today. Maybe not in the same more traditional everyman way. It's kind of more of a look, with the young people nowadays. But it's nice to see it kind of come back. Although, what I always think about is a lot of guys love like they love to post Seinfeld inspo, but no one is ever actually doing like the real Seinfeld. It always feels a little too modern, which is fine.
Yeah. Well, I think there's
But
definitely kind of specific strains of Seinfeld that have caught on. But
right,
as we've talked about, the actual show Seinfeld has many different strains within it of fashion, which is one of the things that's so interesting. But like only some of those I think are more commonly associated with it. Like when I think about a lot of stuff that gets posted on Throwing Fits Instagram, they're like Fit Check Fridays. I think that's a lot of maybe Jerry combined with Kramer. Like it's kind of bold,
mm,
very kind of oversized and loose, and very comfortable and cozy. I think that's that whole vibe, right? With this, in the past 2 years, is obviously big since pandemic. People are leaning way more towards comfort, but yeah, you don't see people. Or I was going to say like No Man Walks Alone. A lot of the way they style
yes,
things, I feel like is also somewhere between like they have a lot of kind of bold, interesting patterns, which are very Kramer, but again, these kind of very loose, comfortable fits, which I think is very Jerry. Um, so yeah, that's what I see most, and I think of those two vibes as pretty similar, and that's like one kind of obvious strain that exists within Seinfeld, but of course there are many other veins to mine in them there hills.
The Seinfeld Hills.
Yeah, the Sign Hills.
no, yeah, I think I mean, that's what makes it, yeah, a great place to look at for inspo. um to go back to my original question, to you, I definitely feel like I've been kind of incorporating more ideas. Like I've been wearing a lot more like dark shirts,
Mm,
to kind of do the Jerry stand up look, which again to me is very like Euro, um, Esquire man, and then of course a lot of like George outfits. I don't really dress like Kramer as much, even though I love my patterned shirts.
hmm
Um, but Spencer, what about you? Do you think, as you watch the show, do you think
Um
any
I think
holdover?
I mean I'm like I don't know. I always really like the blousy shirt tucked into like high rise trousers, which
Yeah,
I
the
feel like
silhouette is very
that's like a
cool.
very
Yeah.
standard like Jerry outfit, like and I find myself appreciating that a lot. Like I also, like you said, maybe he's not my favorite character, but I'm finding a lot like I really like how Jerry dresses. Some of the more simple looks with just like sweatshirts with the base layer turtleneck stuff like that I think look really good.
Yeah. Again, like I think there's a lot of stuff here that it kind of is very sad head mindset, very applicable stuff that we've talked about. I mean, we talk about in our Discord like how culture is dying and everything. And
We're always talking
not
about that in Discord.
but I do think like in the 90s was like the last like true like regular guy menswear merger where like sportswear and menswear kind of, and tailoring, Ivy, whatever, trad, kind of exist together without it being like a look, without it being like specifically fashion, even though as the show shows, um they do think about this stuff a lot, which is kind of funny.
Well, I think there's a larger kind of issue or idea that you're getting towards there, Ethan, which I think a lot of different people have observed, but I just saw it kind of popping up on Twitter not too long ago. I think it was something that Chuck Klosterman wrote, who's like a music critic, culture critic,
Hmm.
Gen X guy, but he was saying that the 90s were like the last decade in the sense that it was distinct in terms of aesthetics from the previous decade, and it kind of had its own identity. And then since then, he argues, and I've heard others argue, we have this kind of stuck culture where things are just kind of run together. And like he was trying to say, there isn't that much of a difference between the first and the second decade of the 21st century in terms
Mhm.
of style and culture and aesthetics, relative to how things used to be, where like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And I
Right.
don't know what the answer is. I think there's arguments for this is absolutely true and arguments for it's not at all, and it's just we're still a little too close to it. Or another interesting part of it was somebody's like, well, the idea, the fact that fashion changed so quickly in these kind of distinct decade ways was very new in like the 20th, the kind of
That
post-war
is
era.
also, yeah,
Like
that's true.
that only was new and existed in certain conditions. But anyway, it sounds like a kind of broader version of the point you were making about menswear, that we could kind of connect that to the entire culture.
Absolutely. I mean, again, not to go too off topic here, but I feel like that's all been the theme of a lot of the different debates, arguments, and drama that's been happening with me lately. Just kind of this disconnect between like how we view not just trends, but like you said, like kind of the generational differences and the differences in approach and everything. Um, and again, like it's interesting because like again, I look at Seinfeld as like an other thing. I wasn't around for it to be, live on the air. It wasn't what my parents. I mean, I'm sure they watched it, but again, like it wasn't like their show. So to be able to look at this IP with like kind of like an aesthetic mindset of like, oh, this is just something else I can get into, as opposed to it just being a part of like regular culture, is very interesting to me. Um,
I'm
and
looking at your IP right now,
Yeah.
and I'm going to report it to the cyber
Yeah.
police.
Hey, I see you, P.
I backtraced
Yeah,
it.
it's
Sorry.
like I'm Louis C.K. And you guys are
Oh
in my
I
boy,
dressing
gotta
room.
loop. You gotta loop him.
Yeah, that's right.
you've been looped.
Well, thank you, Young Chomsky, for jumping on the podcast with us and talking about
You
this.
did jump on.
I love
Yeah, you
jumping.
jumped on
It's one of my favorite things to jump on. It's
countless
trampolines, waterbeds, and podcasts.
waterbeds. Whoa, licorice pizza much?
I
LP?
haven't seen it. Please don't spoil that.
Okay, I'm
There
not gonna
now
spoil it
I know
for you.
there's a waterbed content in it.
Might as well not
So
see the movie.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
no,
that's
now
the
I know
whole.
I'm prepared. I
There you
can go
go.
for the excitement. But anyway, thanks for having me, guys. It's always a pleasure, and
Yeah,
I hope
it.
this turns on some of your freak listeners to the obscure property of Seinfeld.
Yeah. Um, is there anything you want to plug? I mean, because since you're on here, you got your new your
Well, I
little
guess we should know, when does this come out? When does this
this
episode come
this
out?
comes out this comes out in the beginning of March.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, follow Jawnfeld because it'll still be. So I'm 103 episodes in to
Okay.
the series, and there are 180 episodes. So originally, I was literally every day posting a new episode, and I still try to do that, but. And I think that probably is helpful, like algorithmically, to post every day. But I don't care that much, and sometimes I've got other shit to do. So
Of
it,
course.
so I can't tell you exactly how long this is going to go. But there's 77 more episodes to do. So follow Jawnfeld. That's Jawnfeld, and tell your friends. And then, yeah, my main thing is I produce the podcast TrueAnon, and more specifically, I'm in the process now of releasing a special little series that I've been working on called Keep the Dream Alive, which is kind of an audio documentary about sort of indie legend recording studio from San Francisco that shut down after 23 years. And it's, I think, a really fascinating story about art making and meaning and legacy and love and all kinds of things. So I think anybody could listen to it, but specifically if you have any interest in music or indie rock or recording or the industry, I think listen to that. And it features a lot of bands that you might know and love from the 90s and 2000s indie rock world. So but it's released on the TrueAnon feed, so you have to subscribe to TrueAnon to hear it. So that's what I'm up to. So check those things out.
Yeah, check it out, and also follow Young Chomsky on Instagram for
Yeah,
some
get his
fits.
follower account up. Let's get
Yeah,
it higher than the Jawnfeld.
to all of the beautiful women that listen to the
About to
Style
say
and
that.
Direction podcast, a menswear podcast without the stuffiness, follow me. Don't just follow John Feld and then not Young Chomsky,
You
because
will
that's
get a
fucked
DM
up.
about it.
I will not DM you. I do not
I,
DM women.
I will say a lot of your beautiful ladies do tangentially follow me at some point because I take
When
your
you say it
picture.
like that, it sounds very weird to me. I feel like when I say
Yeah,
it, it's
you're
like
beautiful
funny.
ladies.
You're beautiful
Chomsky's
ladies.
angels.
But if anyone's listening to this from Young Chomsky's feed, please follow us. We are a great podcast that I feel like you can totally identify with, being a mentor podcast.
Yeah, I'll co-sign that. Ethan and Spencer taught me everything I know about how to get dressed. Before this, I literally wore just trash bags. I mean,
Buckets or into barrels with
with
straps.
suspenders. Yeah, what's not far, honestly. I mean, we talked about my style evolution the first time I was on this podcast, but yeah,
That's
I
right.
used to dress like a tech guy, just in the sense of like not giving a shit at all, just like t-shirts and
Right.
hoodies and like yeah. So
Well,
it's been
if
a
you guys want to
journey.
listen to more of that, you gotta listen to our Young Chomsky's part 1 and 2, where we talk about that and leftism on the
Yeah,
pod 2
just
years
ignore all
ago.
the
That 2
political.
years ago? 1 year ago. One of those
Yeah, I
things
mean, I was living in San Francisco.
at the
Um,
time.
yeah, it might have
Yeah,
been a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
that sounds
So
right.
I will see you guys again in 2024 on this podcast.
That's right.
There you go. Every two
We're going to be
years.
talking about the politics of Seinfeld. We're just going to put
There
it
you
all
go.
together.
Yeah,
Ooh, yeah,
full
that'd be a meaty
circle.
one. What episode number is this? How many episodes have you guys done now?
This is 83, I
Oh
think.
wow.
83 or 84,
Once
one of
we hit
those
it
things.
100, we get into syndication. So that's when we
That's
start
right.
making the real money.
Sick, I can't wait.
Every channel you'll hear Style and Direction on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will always be on somewhere.
That's
Well,
right.
that'll
Well,
be a big milestone, and I hope to celebrate it with you.
absolutely, yeah, we'll have our first ever sad head party somewhere. And it's funny because even in our home city, there is less people who listen to it than like literally anywhere else. I think there's more people in New York
Yeah,
that listen to the podcast.
yeah. Well, you guys
Well,
should
if you guys
come
wanna,
east.
we will. If you guys wanna come hang out with us virtually, you can go to patreon.com
In the
slash
metaverse.
yeah, in the metaverse, patreon.com/down direction. $5 a month gets you access to our Discord, where we're always hanging out, talking more than just Seinfeld, talking everything, talking milk,
Life.
dripping milk, life, and
Milk?
more clothes as well. Yeah, milk, whole milk. I'm not a Nazi.
2%?
Um, and you also get access to our bonus feed where we talk about movies, which last month was
That's with every episode
Death.
of our bonus episodes. That's when we look at IP.
That's right. I see.
You get access to
And
the
you
boner
can.
feed where you get to look at Spencer being.
There you
That's
go.
right.
OnlyFans. Did I tell you I when I was going to Spencer's house back when he lived at home, there's a bathroom. This sounds really bad, but a bathroom that there's a window, and my friend Jay was just washing his hands, and I thought I did like a voiceover. I was like, "Look, there's Jay washing his hands," and it immediately got taken down as soon as I uploaded it to TikTok because you cannot record people in bathrooms.
You're
Oh
not allowed
wow.
to.
So
Whatever
yeah.
happened to free speech?
The free speech to videotape people in the bathroom. Actually,
Yeah.
remember Dr. Mr. Disrespect, Dr. Disrespect.
Dr. Disrespect.
Yeah,
He got
he
banned.
got his PhD.
Yeah, he got banned from Twitch for a little bit because he was live streaming in a public restroom, which I think is
Oh,
a little
that's
different
the
of a
issue?
thing.
Is that what it was for? I remember it being a big mystery. Like no one knew why Dr. Disrespect, which was just so funny to read about.
Yeah,
And I was like, well, it
yeah.
seems like it's right there in the name. He was too
Yeah, he's just too.
disrespectful.
He was disrespecting
Yeah.
everybody.
I don't know if this was like, I mean, I think he's been banned a couple of times, but yeah, I think he was at E3 and he just like walks through a bathroom with like his streamer setup, like his backpack or whatever, and like guys are using the restroom. Like he blurs out
Well,
people's faces, but they're still like just straight up using the restroom.
what do
with
you
it.
expect at the Excrement Entertainment Expo? All right, sorry. I
That's some
feel
of
like you
the
guys are
great.
trying to wrap this up, and I'm taking it
Yeah,
in
that's
weird
some of the great
places.
stuff.
No, I like the. I love
Yeah.
the E3. The reveal of the true name.
It's funny that it's E3, but you have to go number 2 for that. Anyway,
Oh.
I want to say thank you to our top tier patrons, who give us $10 a month. So thank you to Austin Malott, Audrey Jessica, Jarrett Coley, and Philip Gagard, Jane Curry, and Henrik Wilberg. We appreciate you guys so much. I'm Ethan
I
L.
love
Wong.
Henrik.
I'm
What's up,
Spencer
Henrik?
DSO.
We love Henrik.
I'm
Wow,
young
we're really
Chomsky.
giving him his money. Yeah, Chomsky. We're really giving Henrik his $10 worth by saying his name
I'm
multiple
giving
times
Henrik
on
way more
this.
than that because I keep buying stuff that he's selling
Wow.
So
on the
you're
Discord.
funding his Patreon subscription.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is called the economy. The money goes from
Yeah.
well, actually, because so I have a Patreon, so it goes from the people who subscribe to my Patreon to me to Henrik to you guys.
There we go.
So we should
We're
really be
the-
thanking the patron
The people who
supporters.
loyal-
subscribe to
the
TrueAnon.
loyal
Yeah.
TrueAnon guys. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.